All right, here we are. I am Simone. Oh, okay, fine. My name is Simone Brown. Here is your webinar, Confidence in Every Interview, and I'm going to just pop down to my slide there. I am your cross-cultural communications mentor for international doctors. I have a master's in education. I am a certified pronunciation coach and a bird nerd because whenever you see me, I'll probably have birds on my ears and on my mind. So I'm going to skip through the next slide so I can get to the meat of it. All right. So when it comes to interviewing and preparing for interviews, let's talk about what most IMGs think is the right way to prepare, but and why it doesn't. Do you know any Peruvian birds? No, sorry. Why it doesn't actually work. Okay, so here's the usual approach. Here's the usual approach. You search for a list of interview questions. You Google the interview questions and then they start practicing with other IMGs and they agree on the perfect answer. Does that sound familiar? I know because I've seen hundreds of IMGs do exactly this very thing this year. And they mean well, they're really trying. But the problem is when you practice this way, you're learning to sound like everyone else, okay? Why is it wrong, Simone? So here's a couple of different reasons. First of all, you can't know which questions the interviewer will ask. There are some common ones, but if you start preparing for 200 questions, you will get more stressed out. You cannot prepare properly for 200 questions or even 15. You can't do it. And you will end up getting more stressed out because you know that you can never prepare for all those. So your confidence actually goes down when you do this. It's not good. So it results in canned answers that are totally forgettable. Okay, so remember, these programs, what is the purpose of an interview? Is it to hear perfect responses? No, absolutely not. It is not about that. It's about to see if you are someone they can work with. And if you have these perfect answers and you're stressed out and you sound like everybody else, that's going to hurt you. They want to know, can they work with you? Are you going to be a good work friend? And the way that you answer your questions should reflect that. You know, they've seen your CV, they already know that you're there, and a lot of IMGs, they feel like kind of an inferiority complex. But remember that if you got an invitation, they feel that you're qualified for that job. And so now you have to sell yourself, okay, but not in a braggadocious way, but in an authentic way. That's what we're doing here. Okay, that's what we're going to learn tonight. But there's good news. You can learn how to use your stories to make those connections. You can structure them naturally. I'm going to show you how to do that tonight without having to memorize anything. So, do you have your paper and pencil? Um, I'm just going to keep reminding you of that. Yes, thank you. So if memorizing a perfect answers doesn't work, what does? You need a simple, repeatable process that helps you stay calm, authentic, confident, no matter what question they ask. And so here's my big picture, my four-step framework for crafting unforgettable interview responses. This is something that I've developed since 2019 when I started doing, I guess it was 2020 when I actually started doing interviews as a course. This is what I have developed for you, and I know it works because people all the time come back and say, thank you, thank you, thank you for that. So the big picture is the four steps. Step one, building connections through stories because stories make you memorable. Step two, don't worry, we're going to go through all these again. Discovering the question behind the question, what the interview really wants to know about you. Step three, matching your stories to common questions. And then step 4, applying the STARR technique. I'm going to go through each one of these, and then we'll see how you'll see how this all fits together. Even though it seems like a lot to learn tonight, trust me, once you learn this method, you'll be able to repeat it, and it will become natural for you, so natural that I predict once you learn this method, this is the way you'll tell your stories from now on. Not just for these residency interviews, but for fellowship interviews, for job interviews, for any kind of situation where you're sharing something from your past, your experience, this is the way to do it. Okay, so some of this is particular to these residency interviews, but some of it you can use in life. So aren't you glad you're here tonight? It's a good deal. All right, so step 1, you want to build connections through storytelling. And you do that by knowing your stories. So I want you to take out your piece of paper and I want you to think of 3 to 5 events, just little bullets, just write a sentence or a couple of words, 3 events that have had a profound effect on your career. You could tell a spark story, something that got you interested in your career or your specialty. That's even better for this purposes, for your specialty. So I had a client a few years ago, who was able to watch a cardiac ablation one time, and she knew from that moment that she wanted to be a cardiologist. It had such a huge impact on her that now she is in cardiology. So this is something that really changed the way you thought about things. I would say my spark story is when I met Dr. Trong, when I met Vien, and he told me about IMGs. It's like amazing. Everything changed after that. You know, um, I used to teach tech professionals, engineers, but since that day in 2019, I've only worked with IMG. So it's a huge moment for me. You can tell a story about a patient with a challenging medical situation. So, well, I usually say like an interesting case, like something that was, wow, that really changed again how you thought about medicine. And not necessarily going to medical school, but more about your specialty. All these questions need to show how you're going to be a great resident. So anything that you share, you're going to be um, oh, I got 99 people. Wow, we're about to get shut down here. They want me to buy something. Okay, well, anyway, here we go. We'll keep going. So you could tell a story about a group project. Now, this doesn't necessarily have to be in medicine. If you are really proud of something else that you've done, that you were part of a team, leadership, those kinds of things. Do you have something like that? You could tell a story about a conflict. You always need to have something about a conflict. It can be a conflict with a person, but it also could be about a policy or a diagnosis or anything like that. Just some kind of conflict. So great. The challenge is the structure, right? So we'll get to that. Don't worry about it. And then tell a story about a victory, like something you're really proud of. Okay, you want to put that in there. So these stories are where you start. So the difference between the way that I'm teaching you and the way that you might have been doing this before is I start with the stories. Okay, I don't start with the questions. The questions are going to come in a few minutes. But I start with the stories. You have to know your stories in order to go into these interviews and be able to tell about your experiences. So when you're thinking about these stories, there's a couple of things I want you to remember. Just focus on the stories right now. Don't worry about the questions. You need to test if it's the right kind of story. So I want you to close your eyes, or everybody's eyes closed. Don't say yes in the chat because then I know that you're looking. Okay, so close your eyes and picture yourself. Ask yourself, can I picture where my feet are at this moment? So if you're thinking about the story, you can close your eyes and you can think about where your feet are. then it's a story that you can share. So I don't want things that were a general situation. I don't want something that happened a lot of times in the past. If it was a reoccurring event, I only want you to talk about one time. I only want you to talk about one patient. I only want you to talk about one experience. If you know where your feet are, then we can start working on this story. So close your eyes. We're going to all close our eyes. Think about one of the stories that you just put yourself in. Where are your feet? I know where my feet are. My feet are on the floor in front of the computer talking to Vienne. And that's what changed everything. So I know exactly where I was that day, and I can tell you all about the story. Um, so I hope that you've been able to at least think of one that is coming to your mind. Does everyone have like one story that they can work on tonight? Do you have one? Yep. Thank you, Sean. She's my gap twin. We both have gaps in the front of our teeth. Yes, yes, we have three people. There's 90 of you. There's 82. I should have 82 yeses. Come on, come on. Fantastic. It's so good to see a lot of my clients here. I had a group practice session this morning that I put together, especially for the people in India and Pakistan, but a lot of people from the United States came too. We had a really nice group practice session this morning, so I'm glad to see you guys came back tonight. That's awesome. Some of the stuff we did this morning. So AM from Sudan. Good, good. It's good to see you. All right, so if you have your story, let's go to step two now. Once you know your story, the next step is to think about what interviewers are really looking for when they ask the question. Okay, so discovering the question behind the question. Set your story aside for now. Before choosing your story, pause and ask, what does the interviewer really want to know about me? Okay, so when they ask a question, what is it that they want to know? Every question is an opportunity to reveal your character, your judgment, your self-awareness, many things about your character. And the real question is rarely about the situation itself. So you're going to be talking about the situation, but it's really about how you think, how you respond, who you are under pressure. And so you need to choose a story that highlights your values and mindset, demonstrates growth or reflection, and lets your true strengths shine. So that is the question behind the question. Let's look at that a little bit more. What are your true strengths? So here are some that you might want to do a screenshot of this. Do a screenshot. Go ahead. I'll give you a second before I go on. So here are some strengths. When you talk about what are your strengths, here are some that are important in the workplace: personal qualities, interpersonal strengths, professional mindset. Okay. And here are some of the strengths. This is not everything. Okay. This isn't everything. I'm just giving you some examples. But I'd like you to look at the last two lines, because these lines here, I feel like they are where it says humble, reflective, good listener, supportive, thoughtful, steady. They don't have to always be like really harsh, strong strengths. Some of them are more quiet, and that's okay too. It's more important for you to know what your strengths are authentically. Authentically. I struggle a lot with the big tell me about yourself question because I don't know the QBQ. Well, there is no QBQ. They want to see if you can relate your experiences quickly in about a minute and a half to 2 minutes. Are you going to ramble on forever? Are you are you going to know how to tell them just a quick introduction? So you can always go back. I think let's see, did I do this one before? I don't think I did. But let me know if you want to email me I will send you some information on that. Or actually, there's something really great later about telling me about yourself. So I just forgot. That's part of what we're going to talk about tonight a little bit. So those are the qualities that we're talking about. Now, here is the common interview questions and their QBQ. So I'm going to give you the questions, and then I want you to, in the chat, tell me what you think the question behind the question is. So, what are they trying to find out about you? What do they want to know? When they ask, tell me about a time you worked under pressure or handled stress. Like, what is it that they want to know? What is it that they want to know? How can we handle stress? That's straightforward. Pretty straightforward. Pretty straightforward. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Can they count on you? Very good, Paolo. Very good. Can they count on you? Can they trust you? Yes. Are you reliable? That's really good. See? Yeah, look a little bit deeper. I know you're being funny, but a little bit deeper is good. Yeah, quick thinking. Very good, Nani. Um, So, how do you perform when the stakes are high? Do you remain composed and effective? Do you stay content in hard moments? That's good too. I'm not sure if she's here. I can't see everybody who's here, but I had a client this morning tell me about a mistake that she made on her very first day. And it was okay. Everybody was all right, but it was a pretty big mistake. And I was just like astounded. She made this mistake on her first day in rounds. And wow, she got up and she did what she was supposed to do after that. I would have said, never mind, I quit. I don't want to be a doctor, right? Um, do we have the qualities to stand the residency stress? Very good. Resilience, very good. Very good. You guys got it. Here's another one. Describe a time when you had a conflict with a team member and how you resolved it. Do they care about your conflict? They don't really care about your conflict. What do they care about? Okay. Communication, collaborative, our maturity, very good. Negotiation skills, yeah. Yes, good. Some of these were not on that list, right? But you got it. You got it. Yeah, how do you solve it? Very good. Can you navigate interpersonal challenges with respect, listening, and collaboration? There's always going to be like a difficult person in your life. Sometimes these things don't resolve, by the way. Are you a person that causes trouble? I had a client a few years ago, and you guys might know him, so I'm not going to say who he is, but he was applying for surgery, and he was talking about this guy. He was a surgical assistant, and this guy that he was working with just always made him so mad. He was so rude, and he always just wanted to punch him in the face. And I said, well, how did you resolve that? And he says, I don't know. I still want to punch him in the face. I said, okay, well, you can't talk about that one. We have to come up with something else. So, all right, here's another one. Tell me about a mistake you made and what you learned from it. So, my good friend this morning was talking about this mistake. And actually, she was saying, well, what she learned was to be very, very careful, right? To not make mistakes. And I said, nope, that's not what you learned because you're going to make another mistake. Mistakes happen. It's what you do with that. And I said, look how brave you were on your first day and you didn't quit. You came right back. You picked yourself up. You didn't try to make excuses. You didn't blame other people. You did it and you kept on with your job and look at you here. Look at you now. Look at you now. Isn't that good? So I like that. Did you take ownership? Did you learn? Did you grow? Yeah. Are you okay with the idea of making mistakes and learning from it? Very good. Accountability, self-awareness, very good. Are you coachable? Oh, I love that. We got growth, very good. We have some good ones. Okay, here's another one. Ready? You guys are getting it. Give an example of when you demonstrated leadership or took initiative. What do you think? What do they want to know? Is this a harder one? Hmm. I got 80 people here and I have about 5 people texting. So come on, you guys, chat, chat. Yep. Are you a person other people can grow next to? Can they depend on you? Very good. Can you lead teams or physicians? Yeah, by the way, these leadership questions, like I said, they don't have to be in the medical field, but they can be. Problem solving, responsible, that's good. Um, and I think that it's very good to learn how to organization skills, good. I'm waiting for a couple. Do you take active action when it's needed? Good. Team player. Very good. Ding, 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 ding. All right. So, yeah, so that's great. Are you going to give credit to your team, by the way? Are you going to be able to delegate? Some people, they're the leaders and they do everything. So, when you talk about a time when you were in leadership, make sure you talk about your team and all the things that they did. Not just about yourself, but how you led the team. And then one more. Describe a situation where you had to adapt to change or overcome a challenge. Patient care and advocacy, that's good. That's always important. Okay. A situation where you had to adapt to change and overcome a challenge. By the way, I'm going to answer this one for you a little bit later. Resilience, good. Resilience. Yeah. Are you resilient, flexible? Good. Mm-hmm. Yep. You got it. Adaptation. I like that. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, can you pivot? Can you pivot? If you're going this way and it's not working, can you pivot and do something else? So I like that. I like that. Pivoting, hardworking, good. All right, was that helpful? So those are your QBQs. You got it. So you have to think when they ask you a question, what is it that they want to know? It's very important to understand how to answer this question based on what are they trying to find out about you. They want to know your character strengths. If you don't show them your character strengths, they can't know it. Okay, so then step three, we're already on step three, everybody. Match your stories with common questions. Now we're getting to the questions. So you are going to identify the QBQ. What does the interviewer really want to learn about your character? Understand the value or quality that they are assessing. And then you're going to think about the stories that you have prepared, and you're going to select from that list of stories that you have which one best portrays that character trait that they're trying to learn about. Do they want to learn about empathy? Do they want to know about resilience? Do they want to learn about your teamwork, how you collaborated? Then you choose that story in order to answer the question. You choose a story from your list that best demonstrates that strength or value, and then you highlight the part of the story that most clearly shows that strength in action. Tailor your story slightly to emphasize what matters the most to the question. And I'll show you how to do that in a minute. You're probably just going like, what is she talking about? It's okay. When I start talking to you about your STARR format, I'm going to pull it all together. Okay? So just be patient, you 85 people. So remember that each story that you have is multi-dimensional. Depending on what you focus on, it can reveal different strengths or values. So you think about your story and you think about what it is that it reveals. So you want to match those two together. Okay, so you have your story list right now. So next to it, I want you to write out what strengths or values do you think that you either exhibited or that you grew from based on that story? I'll give you a minute. Have some more tea. So you could have 3 or 4 things next to each story. It kind of depends on how you look at it. Okay? It depends on how you look at it. Um, so remember your stories. You go from story to strength to question. Let's work backwards this time, okay? Take your paper out again, look at your 3 to 5 stories, or maybe it's just one. Instead of starting with a question, start with a story. Ask yourself, if I told this story in an interview, what could it show about me? What strengths or values does it reveal? Okay? What strengths or values does this story show? Which questions could this story help me answer? Now we're starting to get to the questions. Could I shift my focus to highlight something new? So look at your story list. What strengths or values does each story reveal about you? Which questions could this story help me answer? And could I shift my focus to highlight something different? So don't just think you're just going to talk about one thing. If you shift it a little bit, then it can show something else. So if you were asked, if you, in other words, let's just say, like we were talking about the interesting case or a difficult patient, you could talk about the medicine there, but you could also talk about communication skills. You could also talk about teamwork because maybe it was a multidisciplinary effort to get that person better or cared for. It wasn't just you, it was the team, it was the doctors, the nurses, the techs, the social workers, everybody. So that's a teamwork, you see. So if they said, when is a time that you showed leadership or you were on a team, you could use that story for an interesting case, but also for teamwork or cooperation. Um, so think about that. It's very, very important to be able to use one story for 2 or 3 different questions. And you have to kind of imagine what those would be. Um, so one strong story can answer several questions depending on what you emphasize. Okay? So that is your step 3. Now, step 4 is the STAR method. This is how you're going to say it in the interview. You guys ready for this? This is the star of the show. So now you have your list of stories. I would say 3 to 5. By the way, in your interview, your goal is to go from story to story to story instead of question to question to question. So if they ask you a question, you tell your story fully, okay? And then hopefully they'll ask you another question where you can tell another story fully. Okay, so there's no rush. Once they ask you the question, you answer it fully using this format. If you use this format and you get very good and efficient at it, you should be able to tell just about any story within 3 minutes. So that's what you should do. Anything longer than that, you're probably giving too much information and you might be leaving other information out. So, of years of experience, I know that you can tell a story and you can tell it in 3 minutes using the STAR method. So this is the structure that you're going to do. The S is for situation. So you want to set the scene for me. Where were you? Where are your feet? Okay, where are your feet? If you can't tell me where your feet are, it's not a story. It's just like something that might have happened, or it is a general situation, not a specific one. We want to get as specific as we can. This is going to bring clarity, focus, and meaning. So we start with that, set the scene. Where were you and what was happening? And I need to know what your job was within that situation. In other words, your job title. So I need to know if you were a medical student, or you were first year resident, or you were a house officer, or you were in a rural area all by yourself. I need to know that context. I need to know the context because that changes the way you responded. I work with fellows also. So when we go through this, it's higher level stuff. It's not like what you would do as a medical student. It's like how are you going to react as a more mature person finishing residency, going into your fellowship? So we need that clarity of what your job position is. who is on the team, what's going on, all of these things. Where were you? Okay, everything. Spend some time on the situation. It's very, very important because we're trying to make connections here, and we can only make connections through our senses. So right now you're building a picture for them. You're building a picture of where you are and what was going on. A lot doctors have a lot in common, so they can sort of place themselves there if you give them enough information. Then T for task. What needed to be done and what was your responsibility in that? And so you're going to have to say I. Do not say we at this point. When you get to the T for task, I want to know what you needed to do personally. You might have been on a team, so that you need to say this person was doing this part, this person was doing this part, and I was doing this part. So I need to know what part you had in that situation. The next thing is approach or action. So it kind of depends on the question. Sometimes approach is more um, is more relevant, maybe, but always action. And when I say action, I want some action verbs in there if you can, because again, we're doing some movement now. So we are engaging the senses. This is what makes your answers memorable. You said it, you painted a picture, and now you've got some action in there. So actually say what the steps are. So if you had a conflict with a coworker, you can say, well, I didn't say anything at the time, but after I ask her to come into the break room with me, I sit down with her, I say this, and this, and she said this, and this, and then we came to an agreement, and now we're best friends, whatever it was. But the action, we walked down the hall, okay? We entered the village. We knocked on the chief's door, the mayor's door, whatever it was that you had to do. I want some action in there. I want some movement about what you needed to do. And then R is the result. The result is what was the result of your actions? What changed or improved? Sometimes it's not a good outcome. You guys are doctors, people die. I understand that. Sometimes people don't get better. So you don't necessarily have to have a perfect result. That's not really the issue here. That's not what they really want to know. It's sort of like in research. You go through a whole research project, and then maybe the result isn't what you expected, but it's still the result. So you don't change the result. It is what it is. That's science. Believe me, I believe in science. Okay. The next part is the most important part, which is your reflection. Your reflection, you have to bring it full circle. Connect what you learned right back to the original question. This is where you show your growth, insight, and professionalism. So from this experience, I learned that being part of a team requires this, and this. Being a leader means that I do this, and this. Making a mistake, I can get back up and I can take responsibility and I can do what I need to do. Do you see how I'm doing? I'm bringing that R, that reflection. I'm reflecting back the question and my character strengths within that story. And so that final R is your strongest moment. It closes the loop, it reinforces your key message, and it leaves a lasting impression. If you do this method, STARR, if you do it correctly, you're able to connect it to different kinds of questions. You change that R, that reflection, you change it just a little bit. So if you have one story and you think, hey, I could answer three different questions with this one situation and story, but the R for reflection will change. It depends on what it is that you're trying to answer back to them. You bring that back to them. And so I'm going to give you a little example. What do you think? Is there any questions so far? I'm going to give you a little example here in a minute, but I'm going to pause here just for a moment and see if you're still 86 strong. I'm so happy all of you are here. Any questions so far? By the way, we are going to have a Q&A later, but I kind of like to pause a little bit if there's something that's just, you just really need to ask me right now. Was that clear? Or did I lose you? Yes, I lost you. What if the interview asks another question for which the same story applies to? That's why you have to have five, dear. Or you could use the same one. You could go back and reuse it. I don't recommend that, but you could do it. If you couldn't think of any other story, you could reuse it. Say, remember that other story I just told you? Well, this is another thing that I learned. We are not supposed to talk about any big mistakes, correct? Even if it's not death. Yeah, I would say do not talk. The tricky part is, and this is what I talked about earlier this morning, is many of the mistakes, and I've been listening to these stories for a long time, many of these mistakes that happen maybe in your home country have to do with technology issues or informational issues, and those kinds of things don't really happen too much here. So and many times it wasn't your fault. Okay, so I would say don't do that because they're not going to understand. Okay, they're not going to understand. So try to think of something where this is something that people here would understand. Not that people don't make mistakes here, they do. They're just different mistakes, and they won't understand the mistakes that you made, but they make mistakes too. Okay, so if the stories are more with the volunteer work or any other work other than medicine, can it make it clear that it might be interesting? Yeah, no, I think it's good. They want a well-rounded person, Sarah. They want a well-rounded person that, so talk about your volunteer. Talk about your volunteer experiences. I had a client last year who she lived in California and she was there during the wildfires and she was part of a initiative to rescue pets who had been lost or separated from their families. And it was they talked about it in the interview. And I think it probably is what got her the job because it was just so emotional over there what happened. Um, so yeah, so I'm going to apply the four-step framework to myself. Now, I'm not going to give you one that you can use because I know you people. You hear a good story, you think you're going to use it. Don't do that. You need to be authentic, okay? Be authentic. And if you can't think of an answer, you just say, I can't think of anything right now about that. I mean, you just have to be honest and transparent. But I am going to apply the four-step framework to my example. So remember what I said that there was that one question about when I'm struggling with something or the situation is bad, what do I do? So I want to choose a story about when COVID hit and that step 2 CS exam was canceled. So after I was teaching Vienne about the step two, I learned about the step two and I developed a whole course on the step two. I was so excited about that. I was going to make $1 million on that step two CS. You guys were not going to have to go to the Red Roof Inn in Houston. I was going to teach you online so you didn't have to stay there for a month learning the step two CS. So I was very excited about it and I was just about to launch it. In fact, I had one cohort before COVID really hit and shut everything down. And then they said, no, we're not going to do that test anymore. I tell you what, that was the core of my business, and I was really devastated. I remember when I was reading about them canceling it, and I thought, how can they cancel that? They can't cancel that. That's so important. And then every day I would check again, and then they said, nope, we're not going to do it. And then we're going to do the OET, and they never went back to the steps 2 CS. And I remember thinking, all this work that I did is for nothing. But I felt sorry for myself. I felt sorry for myself for a little while. Um, and I thought, well, this is a major setback, but what's the real question here? How am I going to respond when everything changes? Do I have resilience, creativity, and purpose? That's the question that I had to ask myself. And I thought about it. I thought about, well, that's kind of what happened to me. And so I went back, I talked to my clients who I had been teaching Step 2 CS, and they said, we could really use some help with interviewing. We could really use some. And I thought, well, am I going to close my business or am I going to rebuild my business? So I listened to the IMGs. I rebuilt it around interviews and communication. And what was the result? I created new programs that filled quickly and it helped IMG's match after all these years. I have no idea what would happen if I had stayed with Step 2 CS. I feel like such a better communications teacher and mentor because that happened to me. And believe me, there's so many people that died, and you guys are the heroes, by the way, of COVID. You are the heroes. But this is just in my little corner of the world what happened to me. But I learned that my why is clear, helping IMGs. I know I want to do that. I can adapt to anything. You know, when they came out with a new application, I adapted to that. I started writing personal statements for people. I do residency readiness for those residents who are struggling, actually, even after they match. Thank you so much, Sean. I appreciate that. And that continuous improvement was key for me serving you guys better. If I would have just stuck with the Step 2 CS, maybe it wouldn't be what it is now. So I forgot to share my steps, but here it is. Those are my steps. So do you see how I can, I can share that? I didn't time myself, but I don't think it was more than 3 minutes. Okay. So I want to leave you with this for now. They know you're smart. They have your CV. They have your CV. They read your personal statement. You need to show them your heart when you get in there to the interview. That's what they want to know. You have to be authentic. Do not make any stories up. Tell them the real deal. That's what they need to hear. And so that's the main part of the webinar, but I have